All right, let's start off by saying Barakatay Hawa, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem B'cha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is A Tidbit on the Full Moon. Now, just was meditating on that, on that whole thing. And what I did was I typed in, just, looking up the darkness that covered, that particular spot where Yahushua was crucified, and the thought came into my mind to do a Google search just to see what it said. And I typed in to Google, it says, what phase is the moon in during Passover? Right? And this is what came up. Passover is observed on the 14th day of the first month, when the springtime crop is ripe. In a lunar calendar, the 14th day of the month is a full moon. All right, so Passover is celebrated during the full moon. So if Passover is celebrated during the full moon and it's the 14th day at evening, how could it be the new moon? It is not the new moon. The full moon is different. When the full moon comes in, that is in the middle of the month. And the middle of the month, that is when the light of the moon is in its total perfection. There's no other time from the beginning of the month to the end of the month. There's no other time when the moon is in its perfection except for at full moon, when the whole moon is lit, or brightly lit. All right. Ecclesiastes 43, he made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times and a sign of the world, because the moon dictates time. That's why it says in the evening and the morning were the first day. All right. And then so on and so forth. So when the new moon comes in, which they call the dark moon, that's what begins the count for the month. This is why the month is called after the moon. It says from the moon is the sign of feasts. All right, which you read in Psalms 80, the 81st chapter earlier. A light that decreaseth in her perfection. So when the light is fully lit on the moon, that is at its perfection. That's when it's perfect. And that happens during the middle of the month. Like I typed in on Google, what phase is the moon in during Passover? It says Passover is observed on the 14th day of the first month, which is really at evening. When the springtime crop is ripe in the lunar calendar, the 14th day of the month is a full moon. You see? So this is when Passover is celebrated. This is when Yahushua was crucified, during the time of the Passover. So going back to Ecclesiastes 43:7, from the moon is a sign of feasts, a light that decreases in her perfection, because the full moon is the perfection of the moon when it's at its brightest. And from that point on, it starts to decrease, because from that point of decreasing, it's starting to go back to the beginning, which would be the new moon. All right. And once the new moon come in, it would be decreased. It wouldn't be at its perfection. Why? Because the moon is starting to reset itself all over again. That's why prior to the new moon coming in, it starts, there's like little slivers of light. Then eventually those little slivers of light disappear. That's when the new moon is being regenerated again, or reset, or renewed. This is why in the Hebrew, the word for new month is chadash, which means new month or new, which is the moon being refreshed. All right, it says the month is called after her name, right? Because when the moon, or when the month comes in at the beginning of it, that is what? The new moon. That is the beginning of the month. It says the month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully, because once it comes in, that's the renewal, that's the count for the next month, and then it starts to increase. This is why you have so many different phases of the moon, daily and weekly. It says the month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven. Now, we mentioned earlier Psalms, the 81st chapter, right? And we mentioned about the new moon. We mentioned about the um, appointed time, right? So Psalms 81, let's read it and then break it down. Psalms 81 and 3, blow up the trumpet in the new moon in the time appointed on our solemn feast day. Now, when you look up the word new moon, right, it's chadash, which means new moon or month, right? The new moon, by implication, a month, okay? Then we go to the word appointed time. You go to appointed time, the word there is kasah or kasa'ah, all right, which means properly fullness or the full moon festival, which means that when the middle of the month comes and the moon is in its perfection, that's when this particular feast day was kept, which was the Passover. And that was the highest feast day that we have. You know, the highest and holiest feast day is the Passover. That's why the word appointed time means the full moon in the Hebrew, right? And that goes hand in hand with what we typed in on Google when I asked Google what phase is the moon in during Passover. And it says, once again, Passover is observed on the 14th day of the first month, which really is the 14th day at evening, which is the beginning of the 15th day, right? When we read Leviticus 23 and other chapters, it gives us the exact time, which is the actual 15th day, all right, which is the 14th day at evening, because the day starts in the evening, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Passover is observed on the 14th day of the first month when the springtime crop is ripe. In a lunar calendar, the 14th day of the month is a full moon, not the new moon. The new moon is the first day of the month. As we read about King David earlier, you know that he was missing the first and second day from Saul. The first day was a new moon, and then the following day says, and the second day of the month. All right, so that's the new moon. The new moon is the first day. The new moon is not the full moon. Those are two different distinct things. All right, the full moon falls in the middle of the month. The new moon falls in the beginning of the month. All right, and when you type in what phase is the moon in during Passover, it's going to tell you the full moon. So somebody's lying out there, God damn it. You know, you decide, you know, the evidence is there, all the receipts are there. So with that, you know, I just wanted to make a little short video on it, you know, since I ran across that and just share it. So I pray that you brothers and few sisters learn something. Till the next time I say, Shalom.